Hi, it's Andy with our Monday video this week, and one of the challenges with the Bible and understanding the Bible is to make sure, whether we're reading it, studying it, teaching it, is that we don't understate what is important, that we don't overstate the importance of something, of what we read or whatever. And I believe that most of the Bible is very clear, and that we should take the words of the Bible, the words of God within the Word of God, and we should take them to mean what they really mean. However, one of the challenges that occurs over the passage of time is that there are certain changes in customs, and there are different understandings, and those lead to nuanced interpretations, sometimes that are easy to examine and to determine whether we're correct or not, and sometimes it's not as easy. We find this in Romans 14, for instance. In verse 1, Paul talks about those who are weak in faith. Now, if we compare the idea of being weak in faith, we might think of Jesus' statement, "You of little faith," and we might compare that idea. And maybe there is some comparison that is there, but in both situations, we must understand that it is not faith that is lacking. In both situations, faith is present. In both situations, Paul and Jesus, they didn't say, "You of no faith," "you who are outside the faith." They acknowledged that faith was present. It was just underdeveloped, at least in a way or in certain areas. Now, for the disciples, for Jesus' disciples, that underdevelopment was more generalized. But for the Romans, it was about certain customs. And one of those customs, as we've seen over these last couple of weeks, as we've been in this, I guess, a couple of weeks ago and then this week in the sermon, was about what people have eaten. Now, I've mentioned the idea that meat is a part of that, but meat wasn't in the passage that I preached on 2 weeks ago. We don't find the word meat actually until verse 21, which was a part of this week's passage. And there are words that can be misapplied for this. So, for instance, verse 21 says, "It is good not to eat meat or drink wine or do anything that causes your brother to stumble." But some people interpret what Paul is saying as it is not good to eat meat or drink wine. That's not what Paul says. He does not say it is not good to eat meat or wine. He said it is good not to eat meat or to drink wine, with a condition. And that condition is when it causes your brother to stumble. So he's not saying don't eat meat. He's saying don't do it if it causes a brother or sister to stumble. And that's really the crux of all of Romans 14, which obviously follows Romans 13, which mostly was about love. Now, too many people, and this includes Christians, and, well, by the way, this includes me as well, are sometimes far more worried about being right than they are about loving others. And the danger in Romans 14, if we interpret this wrongly, is to begin to think about overlooking sin. But for Paul, the sin that is in play here is judgment over matters of opinion. Not judgment over sin, but judgment over matters of opinion. Because too often we elevate our opinions to be on par with God's expectations. And we do that because we want people to live a certain way. We want people to live by a certain code, if you want to use that word. We might even want them to keep a particular commandment or do better at a particular biblical commandment. And therefore, we might tear people down, as Paul uses in verse 20. We might tear people down when they don't measure up to that standard. But when we do that, we miss the greatest commandment, which is love. Love is really the standard. Love is the standard by which Christians are measured. Those are not my words. Those aren't even Paul's words. Those are the words of Jesus. And if love is the standard, then love should be our motive as well. Our motive shouldn't be about being right. Our motive should be about loving others. Again, in Romans 14 and in Romans 13, and all the way back to Romans 12:9, all of this is really about love. And because we love others, we're not to judge them over immaterial matters, no matter how important those matters might be to us. Because what truly matters is what is important to God. And that's what makes Romans 14 so challenging. Because if we love others, we should confront sin in their lives just as they should confront sin in our lives. But as I've said countless times over these last couple of weeks, we need to be sure that what we're calling sin is actually sin, not just a matter of opinion or preference. And again, we are entitled to our preferences. God made each of us a certain way. You have likes, I have likes. You have dislikes, I have dislikes. Some of the things you like, I don't like, and vice versa. And some of those matters, some of those items may even be as it relates to expressing our faith. But remember, even though we may all have preferences, our opinions must never get in the way of God's true commands. And the greatest of those commandments that He gave is love.